Hello, fellow travelers. Before we arrive at our final destination, I thought I'd cover some background here in case anyone is interested. I make existential YouTube videos, but I'm also a moderator on a couple groups where people serve up memes. I realize I've really exposed myself in this face reveal. For the memes we're looking at today, they had to get at least 50 reactions. This isn't just 50 reactions from the crowd, but from seasoned connoisseurs of existential content. I did filter a couple in that I determined to be underrated. And as many of you have discovered, you can find memes going over to the community tab here on the Existential Heroes channel. I've seen some excellent stuff and I thought, why not take a break from peering into the lives of exceptional people to take a tour of the greatest existential memes? Okay, brace yourself because here we go. This one speaks to the way people are ashamed of their opinions and then try to disguise them as something other than their opinion, which is indistinguishable from having less of an opinion. I run into a lot of people on social media who say things like, good and evil are just two sides of the same coin. Nope, not true. Everyone could be a farmer and live off their own crops. Not everyone could be a thief. There wouldn't end up being anything to steal. There are clear choices in life, and they are not going to make themselves. There's a lot of interest in consciousness and how it can't be explained scientifically. Well, okay, yes, that's worth looking at. We'll cover that more later. Let's never confuse a streaming river of sense perceptions that comes running into our brain for understanding what we have chosen to live by. That takes choice. Freedom is what you do with what has been done to you, as Sartre puts it. Unlimited ambition and thirst for acquisition is not an expression of decisive living. Decisive living says, this matters to me more than that. It's time for us to make up our minds. Humanly speaking, there are a lot of things in the physical world that could seem to bring us assurance on one level, but these streams never truly satisfy. The more intently you seek the approval of others, the less you understand why you are living your own life. I think people reach for the banner of, don't hurt others, when they want to get to the broadest number of people to agree with them. But no one is talking about how not hurting others brought them to life or brought them out of despair. I find it sad that a lot of people miss out on the assurance of yielding to those who people have determined to be in authority. Of course, it's also terrible to look to authority to live your life for you. Even heaven isn't going to do that for you. A lot of people are passing out the truths that just come flying into their brains, and not the ones that they have treasured and stored deep within. I see a great many people on social media saying their mediocrity keeps them away from committing villainies, as if snoozing their life away is somehow an achievement of greatness. No, it isn't. Wake up. Those villains are going to find more meaning in their lives than the people who completely check out from life. Consider what Kierkegaard said about how demons are more spiritual than the people who live in mediocrity. Science is just a fancy way of judging by appearances. Don't confuse that with greatness. It's sad that people only allow themselves to find as much meaning as the textbook writers allow them to. At a certain point, it stops being the fault of the textbook writers. Kierkegaard gives us a solid reminder in Fear and Trembling that while earthly goods and treasures occasionally go to those who do not deserve them, inner treasures do not. And this is his prelude to discussing faith. Kierkegaard wrote in a letter to his friend about how passions transcend feelings. Yet here in this era, we content ourselves with feelings, or we call ourselves content anyway. There's something greatly dishonest about how the people who claim to be without bias are the very ones burning down the world with their disguised opinion. When you are unable to see with your human eyes people that continue living after death, then you need spiritual eyes to see it. A big part of the obsession with looking to the government for everything is the mandate people feel obliged to grow safety to new levels, often at the expense of personal freedom. It's worth reminding ourselves about the cost behind everything we do. When someone explains a joke to you, it's less funny. So too when someone chews your food for you. How much more so when someone else tells you that something matters and you just go along with it. The promises of rationality are broad and shallow. Do what matters to you in the deepest sense. I don't feel like we understand tyranny because we just see the political dimension of it and not the way people treat their own lives like despots. But this one works on several levels. This is a good little reminder to have from time to time. Sometimes the crowd favors something because it works on the surface, and oftentimes the surface is the only place it works. Don't judge by appearances. A big part of understanding a superhero is digging into their backstory, like how Bruce Wayne learned how to overcome the deceit of riches when he lost something that truly mattered to him, his parents. In the same way, your backstory and what you do with it is tightly related to God. Who can truly say that they were made without him or have nothing to learn from his perfect ways? If people were willing to see how their own choices shape their lives, they would feel less disconnected from them. If you swat all the truth out of your life, don't be surprised if you are left with nothing. Here I'm reminded of Kurt Gödel, proving that there are an infinite number of unprovable truths, which means insisting on proof is necessarily going to separate you from a lot of truth. There's a lot of superficial reasons to make good choices, sure. There's also a lot of deep and profound reasons to make good choices. Nietzsche had some good wake-up material for the 19th century, but this quote that he's most celebrated for is hardly existential in the way people think he meant it, or in the way he probably did. Suppose God became unpopular in Germany in the 1800s. So what? What kind of death is it to become unpopular? It isn't. Existentially speaking, siding with the crowd is a liability. What is existential about God somehow dying or disappearing or whatever? No one can explain how that's existential. There's a sad side to the lives of most comedians, so I will permit their art as long as they can succeed in reminding us how much vanity steers the world. College professors are saying anytime you say ought or should, you are imposing a belief in God on people, and that this is judging people. And those professors should be asked if people should not do that. If they say yes, they shouldn't do that, then aren't they breaking their own rule? If they say no, it's fine to do that, then the professors who say this have permitted us to disregard them. Doesn't this sound like a description of the world that captures 99% of its activity? Maybe 100% of what I see on the streaming options out there? Politically correct truth is just the wisdom of the herd. Allow yourself to be personal about how you live. People go so hard on others and so easy on themselves, we should always keep in mind our own shortcomings and failures. More on entitled thinking to come. When I was a kid, I thought being wild was so great and awesome, and it does prevail over the dead formalisms that society has to offer us. On the other hand, a wild person has very little say in their own life. It's very easy to go from one day to the next without confronting what it means to live or what we're after. This is why reflection and self-examination are so critical for Kierkegaard. Do you insist on them in your own life? Frequently, when I challenge people to examine and commit to their ideals regardless of what the crowd says, that gets spot analyzed with psychobabble about how it's sociopathic or whatever. Life has far more to offer than fitting in with society. If you want to hear from a solid psychologist, check out Dr. Jordan Peterson or Soren Kierkegaard. Water and epistemology looked at in 3 different ways, just like how there are different ways of viewing and living your life. Insisting on proof is something people do when they want the truth to be forced on them. And even then, they don't actually want to hear the truth. They just want license to live in conflict with themselves. I don't think people understand how unscientific meaning is. Value is a profoundly subjective quality. And how would you measure meaning scientifically? What would the units be? Pounds per square foot? Or kilo somethings or what? Life doesn't come out of a laboratory. It comes from living it. I often see people affirm the practice of selling out and checking out from life on the basis of how we don't have any say in it. You don't have any say in your own life if you don't say anything to yourself in your own life and live it out. People worship the approval of others so much in this generation, and it's more pitiful than any of the other false religions out there. A house of horrors. I find it difficult to swallow how Nietzsche is looked to as an icon of human freedom while denying that humans could or should practice moral freedoms for themselves. At least in his criticism of evolution, Nietzsche understood that nobody improves by slumping with the species en masse. Instead of all these little pathetic coping mechanisms for goods and services to enhance our lives, they should start making good choices personally. Okay, we've reached the halfway point in our tour through these memes. You might have figured out I made all of them. I wanted to say, if you're enjoying them, you should check out my video featuring the memes of someone else, Epictetus. He's the 3rd most famous Stoic philosopher, but he's also my favorite Stoic philosopher. I mean, he made some pretty ironic observations about life. He's very uplifting as well. Without further ado, let's proceed back to the memes. Hopefully, Carl Sagan was trying to do more than become an icon for mediocrity, but I'm not sure he offered us more to see of himself than this. Entitled thinking has been a problem for many millennia, and a problem that creates problems deep, deep inside. Do you want to be a deep person? Then find your deepest longings and stick with them, even if the world disagrees. I feel a great amount of sorrow for people whose highest expectation in life is nothing more than physical love or having a lot of friends. People apply high levels of verification to the stuff they don't like. This is the note that the Stoics played all of the time, and I have never gotten tired of hearing them do this. I wouldn't be surprised if this motivated Descartes' meditations and all of modern philosophy. If the first thing you reach for is a laugh, don't be surprised if your life becomes a joke to you. Bertrand Russell actually said he would tell God that there wasn't enough evidence to believe in him, which reminds me of what Job said he would tell God, or when criminals tell each other what they would or would not say to the police. But in the hour of confrontation, vanity goes flying out of the window and the truth is unmasked. God will not be mocked. Reminds me of how Kierkegaard said, God desires primitivity, a theme you can find throughout the Bible. God has chosen the foolish to shame the wise. An overeducated generation thinks they are superior because of their many reasons, and then they wonder why nothing seems to matter to them. How much do you want your influences to control you? Because that's how much they will control you. Just because someone pitches something to you doesn't mean you're innocent of going along with it. Widespread are the voices on social media claiming that science can explain everything, when the truth is there are many things it has bet it would solve in a small number of days, and many decades later it has found it hasn't even started. A lot of people play the odds in games where the odds are zero. Be careful about how you identify with your ideals. The thing about pleasure, existentially speaking, is that it happens often when one chooses it or not. Pleasure is not wrong, but it is passive, and you can't derive meaning from anything passive. Meaning is a choice. Reasons and syllogisms can become quite lengthy and difficult to move around in. Don't let the good life escape because you thought you were too good for it. The consolations of the world are always so impersonal to me. You can have it better than that. even if you and I don't deserve it. To be spineless for Kierkegaard is to limp around bending all over the place instead of standing upright. While that would be considered a deformity in the realm of physical health, it is considered highly desirable by society. If you never impose yourself into your own life, no one else will impose a personal existence into it. Evidence comes from the word evident, which is the same thing as apparent, and inseparable from appearances. Don't judge by appearances. The inner world is more sure than our perceptions of the external world. Solomon warned us about people who don't want to do anything and justify it by saying that if they try going outside, a lion might eat them. In the same way, passive, indecisive living is no kind of alternative for taking a chance. I see so many failures in life that can be attributed to people thinking they look bad or are going to be met with opposition, and so they give up prematurely. Do the things you have confidence in, and you won't sabotage your own life. Your parents weren't perfect, your teachers weren't perfect, but they didn't force you to make any failures, and if they pressured you to, you could have resisted. Don't blame your choices on other people. This author frequently wrote some of the best books of all time. I consider him to be an existential hero. People ask for proof before doing things they don't like, but you can't live any kind of a life without taking risks. Come on. Oh, the reasons people carry to be cynics. Those reasons can quickly become terrible burdens. When the ancient Spartans said to know yourself, and when Shakespeare said to thine own self be true and thou shalt lie to no man, they weren't saying it would be easy, but you have to admit it is simple. Stop trying to conform to others and start living out what matters to you. Kierkegaard wrote a lot about how dreadful and wonderful it is to be transparent with yourself, and he warned us about how his age settles for bad lifestyles and then obscures this from themselves. Don't get caught up into this trap. Such a simple yet astonishing command. I find that society is always in a hurry, like they're in a rush to escape the realization of who they are personally. Time to slow down and reflect on life. Study your thoughts to see if they are an advantage for you. It's easy to condemn someone else without realizing how dearly we wish to escape the condemnation we deserve. This understanding is necessary to have an existing self that is not in conflict with itself. It might sound easy to be at peace with yourself, but this simple goal is rarely achieved. You can commit to a long-term goal and succeed with it as long as you are living in the present and take it day by day. That isn't a deception about living in the future. Putting off the good is a deception about living in the future. A lot of people try to understand life by deferring to their feelings. And then, when they get overwhelmed about how their feelings are obviously unreliable, it's hard to see what good their feelings are. But that's when a person's spirit begins to unveil itself. If you want to understand life, sometimes it helps to go to the edge. People frequently focus on how good the things outside themselves are, and they are quick to forget you only have control over yourself. This is the meme I have on speed dial every time someone tells me about how they have reasons for keeping their standards low. Is the latest information about how the properties of quarks or the most far-flung galaxies something that builds you up? If not, then how meaningfully can you call it the truth? If you've never read the story about Jesus and the woman in the well, then check it out. He's not offering a new understanding about how we can relate to dismissed minorities. He's promising life that isn't trying to erase itself, like so many in this mental health crisis we find ourselves in and perpetuate ourselves in. This is my all-time favorite. The artist who made this painting pulled off something amazing. He developed the skills of a commensurate painter and then proceeded to subjugate his entire field to the perspective of children. I use it to remind myself about how the absurd triumphs over the plans of men. And that wraps up our tour of the most existential memes. Did any of them inspire you? Which one was your favorite? Please remember to like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.